A rational government working in the national interest would abandon net zero. Labor is not rational, however, and does not care about the national interest. Labor's policies, net zero, out-of-control immigration and out-of-control spending, and their justifications by cherry-picking facts to suit their agenda are destroying Australia. This is just a sample, but these failures are being echoed around the developed world as countries and corporations realise that renewables and net zero are just unviable and are destroying their economies. The only ones who fail to realise this are toxic Labor and the hateful Greens. I say to Susan Ley, the opposition leader, if you don't know what impacts net zero policies are having on Australian businesses, farmers and homes, by now you are part of the problem.
All right, let's get into it. Imagine flicking on the telly, expecting the usual polite Senate back and forth, and instead you're hit with the political equivalent of a magpie swooping your head at full speed. That's the vibe today. No warm-up lap, no gentle jog, straight into the chaos. Pauline Hanson stands up, Penny Wong sitting there with that calm, unshakable expression, and somewhere outside the chamber, Anthony Albanese is very conveniently not in the room because, of course, he isn't. Upper House debate. Sorry, mate, different postcode. And right from the first sentence, you can feel it, that unmistakable Aussie moment where someone's about to say, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed, but louder, longer, and with a stack of numbers ready to be lobbed like a cricket ball aimed straight at middle stump. Real quick before we roll the footage, if you're enjoying this content, do me a huge favour. Hit that like button and smash subscribe. Over 98% of viewers watch without subscribing. Don't be one of them. It's free for you. And it helps us out more than you know. Already clicked? You're awesome. Let's get into the video.
Labor's policies, net zero, out-of-control immigration and out-of-control spending, and their justifications by cherry-picking facts to suit their agenda are destroying Australia. They ignore the economic realities of their poor decisions that kick them in the face every day. The collapse of green hydrogen projects in Gladstone, Whyalla and Port Pirie, investors pulling out of the Pilbara Green Energy Hub, the scrapping of the solar booster at Kogan Creek, and the scrapping just last week of the offshore wind farm at Newcastle, and Blue Float's withdrawal from the one planned off the Gippsland. This is just a sample, but these failures are being echoed around the developed world as countries and corporations realise that renewables and net zero are just unviable and are destroying their economies. The only ones who fail to realise this are toxic Labor and the hateful Greens. I say to Susan Ley, the opposition leader, if you don't know what impacts net zero policies are having on Australian businesses, farmers and homes, by now you are part of the problem.
The speech rolls out like a highlight reel of everything that's gone sideways in the energy debate, and it's delivered with the kind of confidence that says, I've been waiting all week to say this. Net zero gets mentioned. And suddenly it's less a policy and more a recurring character in a very long soap opera. According to the argument being laid out, it's everywhere, it's expensive, and it's apparently allergic to economic reality. Projects collapsing here, investors vanishing there. Grand green announcements quietly tiptoeing out the back door like they forgot their wallet. And every time another example is dropped, you can almost hear Penny Wong's internal monologue going, right, stay calm, don't roll your eyes, the cameras are on. There's something almost theatrical about the way the list keeps going. Gladstone, Whyalla, Port Pirie, Pilbara, Newcastle, Gippsland. It starts sounding less like an energy policy critique and more like a national tour poster, except every stop comes with the same message, cancelled, postponed, or we'll get back to you. The parody here writes itself because the delivery has that unmistakable Aussie sarcasm baked in, the kind that says, no worries, mate, while absolutely meaning the opposite. The suggestion is that the rest of the developed world is quietly realising the dream might be a bit more complicated, while Australia's leaders are still confidently charging ahead, like they've got a GPS set to optimism only. Then comes the part where facts and figures start flying faster than sausages at a Bunnings barbecue. Emissions up, not down. Trillions mentioned so casually you'd think they were talking about the price of fuel this week. Energy grids apparently held together with hope and extension cords, vulnerable to weather, system shocks and probably a stiff breeze. Australia, an energy-rich nation, somehow managing to feel like it's running on fumes. And through it all, Penny Wong sits there listening, nodding occasionally, the picture of ministerial patience while being served a full economic PowerPoint presentation without the slides. Electricity prices come up and suddenly it's a global comparison game. Australia versus Canada, kilowatt hours being thrown around like pub trivia answers. Households feeling the squeeze. Small businesses tightening belts so tight they're practically fashion accessories. The tone is dramatic, sure, but also familiar because everyone watching has had that moment staring at an energy bill thinking, is this powered by electricity or unicorn tears? The parody angle leans into that shared experience, exaggerating it just enough to get a laugh without tipping into outright doom and gloom. And then there's the farmers, always the farmers in this telling. They're not just battling the weather and the markets, they're now dodging paperwork, transmission lines, and the possibility that their paddock might wake up one morning with a wind turbine as a new neighbour. It's painted in broad strokes. Deliberately so, because satire loves a clear image. Bureaucrats with clipboards versus people who actually grow food. Whether you agree or not, it's an image designed to stick. And it lands with that classic Australian underdog framing that's been used in politics since before colour television. Manufacturing cops are mentioned too, described as shrinking, struggling and quietly disappearing while everyone's busy arguing about targets and timelines. Gas prices triple, factories close, and somewhere in the background, a very ironic battery manufacturer joins the list of businesses going under. That moment almost feels scripted by a comedy writer because you couldn't plan the symbolism better if you tried. The delivery leans into it, milking the irony just enough to get a chuckle out of anyone who's ever said, you couldn't make this stuff up. All the while, Anthony Albanese remains off stage. A kind of political ghost hovering over the debate. He's referenced, implied, and occasionally spoken about like a character who missed the meeting but still gets their name written on the whiteboard. It adds to the parody, because there's something uniquely Australian about talking about someone who isn't there as if they absolutely should be, and doing it with a mix of frustration and dry humour. Then the speech pivots, as these things always do, from diagnosis to prescription. Big, bold ideas are rolled out with the confidence of someone ordering for the whole table without checking the menu. Coal plants described in technical terms that sound impressive enough to quiet the room. Nuclear energy brought up with a rhetorical shrug of, if they can do it, why can't we? Numbers get smaller here, costs framed as manageable. Savings talked up like a miracle cure. In parody form, it's delivered with that straight-faced seriousness that makes the exaggeration funnier. The certainty is absolute. The solution is simple. The only thing missing is a whiteboard and a marker. There's also a healthy dose of Aussie stubbornness woven through it all, a sense that Australia shouldn't be told what to do, shouldn't follow global trends just because they're trendy, and definitely shouldn't make itself poorer in the name of abstract goals. In parody, this becomes almost a caricature of national independence, the kind where you half expect someone to say, we'll do it our way, while folding their arms and nodding firmly. And through every line, the tone stays just on the right side of the line. No personal attacks, no nastiness, just exaggerated confidence, sharp contrasts, and that uniquely Australian habit of using humour and bluntness as rhetorical weapons. Penny Wong isn't painted as a villain, more like the unflappable counterweight to the storm. Albanese isn't demonised, just conspicuously absent, which in comedy can be far louder than any insult. By the end, the energy debate feels less like a policy discussion and more like a pub argument that somehow wandered into Parliament. Big claims, bigger numbers, passionate delivery, and an audience at home laughing, nodding, or shaking their heads depending on where they land. That's the magic of this kind of parody. It doesn't tell you what to think. It just turns the volume up on everything that's already there, adds a thick Aussie accent, and lets the absurdity of modern politics do most of the work. And when the speech finally winds down, you're left with that familiar feeling. Politics as performance, policy as theatre, and reminder that in Australia, even the most serious debates can sound like a roast delivered with a straight face. You don't have to agree with a single word to be entertained. You just have to appreciate the spectacle of it all. The questions flying, the answers implied, and the unmistakable sense that this argument, like an energy bill, isn't going away anytime soon.